Hello, you are watching the Supply Chain Digital Show brought to you by Supply Chain Digital Magazine and Procurement Magazine and BizClick. My name is Sean Ashcroft. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain. And in this show, we bring you all the latest news, views and insights from the world of supply chain procurement every 2 weeks right here on LinkedIn, YouTube and other digital channels. Now, at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce the editor of Procurement Magazine, Ilkan Ozsevim. Hey, Ilkan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, very well, very well. Now, a quick reminder at this point for all of you watching, please do say hello by posting in the comments section. That's just underneath the broadcast area. And also do vote in our LinkedIn poll if you haven't already. That's still live. Actually, on which note, Ilkan, what is our poll this week?
Thanks, Sean. So our poll for this week is, in light of manufacturing problems in China, COVID, power shortages, etc., businesses should A, nearshore manufacturing, B, reshore manufacturing, C, use Vietnam, India, Singapore, etc., or D, wait it out. What are your thoughts on that, Sean?
Well, I mean, it's a huge question, particularly for multinational organizations, that they're the ones who tend to have a lot of their manufacturing bases in China historically, that because labor was so cheap. But of course, that's all changing now because China is riven with economic problems, power shortages because of drought, because a lot of its energy comes from hydroelectric power. And also they're running a zero tolerance approach to COVID, which is crippling, key areas like Shanghai, where a lot of the production centers are. So it's definitely a huge issue for companies at the moment. And they are seriously looking at some of these options. What weight they're giving to them, I guess we'll find out a little bit later on. But anyway, we'll be sharing the results of that poll at the end of the show. Loads to talk about before then. So let's start by taking a look at the latest supply chain and procurement news. So I'll kick us off, Ilkan, with supply chain news. And I'm going to look at a story first up that it's an Ernst & Young, EY piece looking at sustainability measurement and the lack thereof. This is an EY survey of supply chain leaders. I think they spoke to about 750 of them. And it shows the need for visibility on sustainability performance and also a strong business case to drive sustainability results. Now, EY describes supply chains as being the new frontier of sustainability. It's certainly a huge area in sustainability because of course, all the scope 3 emissions from organizations' supply chains. Now, EY say that while many C-suite executives have long-term strategies around sustainability, a good number of them are struggling to actually measure their progress on that front. So EY has a number of suggestions for organizations who would like to have a tighter handle on sustainability progress. And these are to fit sustainable supply into enterprise-wide goals. Where does it sit with all the other sort of corporate goals? To use technology to improve supplier engagement, such an important area these days, supplier relations management, and also to capture benefits of sustainability across the entire supply chain, not just in procurement and the supply chain departments. So that's EY's advice. And staying with professional services companies and their advice, this next piece is a look at some of the stuff that's been going on at the Gartner Supply Chain Symposium, which ran yesterday and I think finishes today. It's in London. Now, chief supply chain officers are looking to navigate supply chain disruption, they need to understand their organization's appetite for risk. This is what Gartner is saying. And what they mean by that, risk appetite, is how much risk is a company willing to take in order to achieve its strategic objectives. And they also need to have a firm understanding of the areas in which they will be exposed to that risk. Now, Chris Poole, who is Gartner's practice vice president with the Gartner supply chain, says it's crucial for chief supply chain officers to understand this notion of acceptable risk appetite, so that they can manage these risks in line with other disruptions. So that's my supply chain news. What about you, Ilkan? What's been happening in the world of procurement?
Thanks, Sean. So the story I'd like to discuss concerns global biopharma company GlaxoSmithKline. And GSK has launched a sustainable procurement program requiring suppliers to reduce their carbon footprint by 2023. It announced this at Climate Week NYC last week, and it's a reaction to the fact that 40% of GSK's carbon footprint is generated through its supply chain, so-called scope-free emissions. GSK suppliers, they account for a large part of the company's impact on global water, waste, and biodiversity. And the company is asking suppliers to source raw materials sustainably using methods that are deforestation-free. I chose this story because it's a great example of how a large corporation like GSK is implementing critically important scope-free action into their sustainability programs. With as much as 80% of all companies' carbon emissions being scope-free, we need to see far more of such initiatives if global sustainability goals are to be met. So I found that an interesting story. And back to you, Sean.
Yeah, it is interesting, Ilkan. It actually really dovetails quite neatly with the Gartner story I looked at just before that, about large companies making progress on sustainability need to be able to measure that progress. So it does sound like GSK is certainly doing that. So thanks for that, Ilkan. So at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce our special guest, and that is David Loosby. David is a procurement professional with decades of executive level experience across multiple sectors, and he also holds a doctorate in behavioral science. Welcome, David. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Sean. Much appreciated.
Now, we've spoken, on numerous occasions, David, supply chain and procurement events, and also, I've interviewed you once or twice, I think, for features for the magazine. And, you come at procurement with, more than one hat on. You have this very interesting perspective, thanks to, your knowledge of, the psychology that's at play in the corporate world. But I wondered if you could just share some of those experiences and your background with our viewers, David, and give them an overview of what it is you do.
Absolutely. I think the first thing I would say, Sean, is probably a term that not many people have probably heard, is I would probably classify myself as a pracademic. In other words, I'm a practitioner and an academic simultaneously, because I have one foot in the camp of being a practitioner and another foot in the camp of being an academic. So I do academic research, and I do work with actually two universities doing work in terms of the executive MBA programs, for instance, as a visiting scholar at University of East Anglia, but also then as a professor of research impact in supply chain management at Leeds University Business School. So this is about trying to sort of make sure that we absolutely define that connection between research and the applicability of that research into modern day issues as we go forward. And I think that's so hugely important. And I think probably for me, one of the things you've known me to talk about many, many times is about understanding I'll call it the human dimension to what we do in really what has perhaps, in decades gone by, been regarded more as a sort of a STEM related sort of science, technology, management type activity in terms of this whole systems and processes and category management. But the harsh reality is that actually we can't achieve very little without actually understanding the behaviors of people in organizations. So I guess for me, that's the big thing, really.
And one of the areas that I know you are heavily involved in, as is virtually everybody else, really, digital transformation. I guess as far as you're concerned, particularly around procurement and supply chain. But what role has behavioural science got to play in that process, David?
Well, I think it has a pivotal role to play. I think there are many. Over a number of years, I've utilised behavioural science and its approaches in a number of large organisations, both public and private sector. And over recent years, because of that intersection, in other words, if you were to draw a Venn diagram and had, digital, procurement, supply chain management, and then behavioural science, for me, that's the essence of Procurement 4.0. And I think this is where then, it does bring it to life, and it brings that sort of, combinatory sort of impact of all those disciplines to really good effect. One of the things that I always recognize, and I suppose I'm super excited about, is the fact of being able to apply behavioral science in digital transformation. Because often what many people miss is the fact that actually what we're looking for is adoption of digital systems and digital technology, as opposed to just pure and simple compliance. I think that's why, for me, the excitement of moving into the sort of the next role, if you like, that comes with that, which is working and joining Supplier as their Chief Behavioural Science Officer in the next few days. Actually, it starts officially on the 1st of October. But I think where Supplier is coming at it from...
Maybe you could just briefly tell people what Supplier is and what it does, David.
Absolutely. So Supplier is really a digital platform that enables the consistency and the transparency, as well as the real-time ability to do supplier relationship management and collaboration across all tiers of your supply chain, and share that across multiple stakeholders within organizations, not just your own, but obviously within that supply chain. Because one of the things that people really, really struggle with at the moment, particularly when they're considering, resiliency, considering impacts, that ability to have that knowledge, that information, and the consistency of having that, at multiple instances is hugely important. So I think being able to sort of enable that, if you like, in real time is a significant contribution to, I'll call it, the procurement and supply chain armory, really. So I think that's why I'm excited about it, because it is at the absolute sort of, how can I put it, crystallization of those forefront skills and abilities that time poor procurement and supply chain guys and girls have in the current environment. So I think that's why it's so pivotal and such an important piece.
Now, well, good luck with that, David. And I'm just moving on to the final question. Now, I know when we've spoken before, there's one thing that has fascinated me, I think, in particular, and that's cognitive bias, which I hadn't really heard much about until I'd spoken with you, and its influence on how decisions are made, and what decisions are made. I just wonder if you could maybe throw a little bit of light on that for our viewers.
Absolutely. One of the things that we, whether we like it or not, we all have over 200 cognitive biases. And what we mean by cognitive biases, some people have probably heard of some of the terms like unconscious bias and confirmation bias and those kind of things. And confirmation bias is probably in its simplest form is a bit like I only want to hear or listen to things that actually support a decision or a direction that I want to follow, and I've discounted all that negative stuff that's going to stop me from carrying on and making that decision to go in a certain direction. Of course, the risk of doing that is that, guess what? You come unstuck.
Yeah.
So
sounds a lot like politics.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Really, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So for me, these biases play out, and of course, we all have them to different degrees. And when you combine that together with our personality traits, our own experiences, which we call heuristics in behavioral science, you multiply all those together on a scale of 1 to 5, you suddenly get to, infinity is the definition, in a sense, of each person's behavioral DNA. So it's not surprising that what we might think is a good idea, somebody else might not think is a good idea at all. And so it's hugely important, along with, the framing of language, the classic sort of, if you do this, then there's a 90% chance you win. But if you do this, there's a 1 in 10 chance you might lose. So, framing that language in different ways will get different reactions. And of course, I've seen so many times people present at boards and all sorts of other key places, and simply because they framed the language incorrectly, have got the decision that they really didn't want. So that's why I see it as being a hugely important piece.
Well, I mean, that really is very interesting. And I think we probably all recognise a little bit of ourselves in what you've just described. But, so I think we're going to see you at the Procurement and Supply Chain Live London event in a couple of weeks. David, is that right?
Absolutely true. And in fact, it's great because, through obviously the usual channels of LinkedIn and social media, it's interesting. People are already reaching out and sort of trying to grab time and stuff like that, which is brilliant because it's all part of the collaboration and sort of, I guess, cooperation that we have within the procurement supply chain community, which is fantastic, of course.
Absolutely. But I could talk to you all day about this kind of stuff. But sadly, that's all time we've got time for now, David. So look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Likewise. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All the best, David. Thank you very much. So we'll take a quick ad break here, but don't go away because we're going to be showing off the latest features from Procurement and Supply Chain magazines. And we'll be looking at the results of the poll as well. So we'll speak to you in a minute.
We have a long history steeped over 200 years in banking in Ireland. Rachel Dolan. My role is Head of Procurement and Supplier Relationship Management in Permanent TSB. Permanent TSB is a full-service retail bank. We're branch-based. We do retail products, current accounts, credit cards and mortgages. Our purpose is to continue to serve the community that is the people of Ireland with their banking needs. I am currently working on a number of projects which span our digital transformation, acquisition of some additional asset classes from some banks that are leaving our jurisdiction. We have a number of strategic projects on our pipeline, including digital transformation, our call center transformation, our resourcing strategy, and then we have all of the standard keep the lights on, renewals, and everything that goes with a fully functioning procurement and sourcing service team. Our present strategy is to be the number one personal and small business bank in the geography of Ireland.
Welcome back. Actually, before we go any further, why don't we just take a look at the comments, your comments, from those of you interacting with us. It's always lovely to see what you've got to say. A quick hello to Ranjith from Bangalore in India and Tio from South Africa. And we've actually got a question here from Atul Gupta. Doesn't say Atul doesn't say where he or she is from, but what are the upcoming mandates on sustainability and decarbonisation? Well, I wish I had an answer for you, Atul. Maybe I could get back to you on that one. And also, there's Paula from Brazil and Edna from Singapore. So hello to you all. And actually, before I move on, if you would like to come to the Procurement and Supply Chain show in a couple of weeks in London, then tickets are free. And if you want a nice, easy way to get your free ticket, then just type the word free in the comments section, and our marvelous marketing team will get straight back to you and will sort that all out for you. And so definitely worth doing. So anyway, I think time to move on to our latest issues of the magazine. So I've got the October issue of Supply Chain Digital and also the latest one of Procurement magazine. Let's just have a look at some of the engaging, insightful comments from our industry experts. Ilkan, why don't you start us off here? What is there a feature from the latest issue of Procurement that you'd like to chat about?
Yes, Sean, thanks. There is. The article I'd like to discuss is headlined Adopting a Dynamic Approach to Supply Management. The piece looks at how businesses can best navigate ongoing supply chain problems with war in Ukraine, rampant inflation and manufacturing problems, and China continuing to make life difficult. Richard Hogg, General Manager, EMEA region of Scoutbee, who was interviewed for this article, describes a never-ending deluge of pressures regarding how organizations ensure supply chain continuity and get the right products and services on time while mitigating risk. He says the key to navigating such a complex market comes down to a single factor, which he names agility, a word we've heard more than once in the past few years. And to reference Charles Darwin, Hogg's point is that it's not the strongest organizations that will survive, but the most adaptable. Now, this is an important point because a company can be as large and as established as it wants, but if it isn't able to dynamically adjust to the shifting supply chain landscape, then it's unlikely to thrive. Hogg goes on to stress the importance of data to corporate agility as well, and saying it's data-driven decision-making that helps organizations adapt to disruptive environments. Agility, dynamism, and data. These are Hogg's drivers of success, and it's hard to disagree with him. So, Sean, what would you like to focus on from the latest issue of Supply Chain?
Well, talking about agile supply chains and how companies who have followed that route are thriving. Going to look at a profile piece we did on Mike Corbo, who's the Chief Supply Chain Officer with Colgate-Palmolive. I think I might be right in saying that it's actually the biggest manufacturing supply chain worldwide. Now, here's an interesting thing. So when Mike Corbo first joined Colgate-Palmolive, a gallon of petrol in the UK cost 34 pence, and $1.31 in the States. And Ronald Reagan had been in the Oval Office for just a year. So, can you guess what year that is, Ilkan?
Around the 80s, early 80s.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. I'll take that. That's it. It was 1982. So Mike Corbo has been with Colgate for 4 decades, and he's needed every last year of that experience to help steer the company through the pandemic and also all of the supply chain shocks that are ongoing through all the reasons we've all been discussing in the show more than once already. Now, at the moment, Corbo's focus is on sustainability within the entirety of Colgate-Palmolive, and they're making great strides on that front. I think all of its 45 manufacturing plants across the world will be waste-free, I think, within a year or so. I think it's the only manufacturing company that will be able to say that. And when I spoke to Mike about how he and his team have helped to achieve that? I think the answer was pretty surprising, because they were dumpster diving. So they had a program of just rifling through skips of dumpsters, they call them in the States, and actually recording everything that was being wasted. And then from there, they measured products and raw materials and components and what was not making final products and why was stuff being thrown out and how could it be recycled or repurposed. And he basically said you have to measure everything, and that's exactly what we were talking about earlier on in that EY story. So that was a really interesting piece.
Yeah.
And
is there anything else from September's issue that
there is actually, Ilkan. Feature moving away from that to sea shipping, which is so much in the news at the moment. But this is a piece looking at the bid to have digital standards across the industry, because that's something that's been lacking. There are standards, but they're disjointed and a bit piecemeal. And so the drive now is to unify the standards right across the sea shipping industry. And this is to foster efficiencies, collaboration, and resilience. And I spoke to two senior figures from the world of logistics, Rex Paschal from Apex Logistics, and also John Vesson from Vesson Nautical. And both were saying that the move towards this unified data standard could help supply disruption in an area that desperately needs it. Because as Vesson says, if you can optimize port departure and arrival times, that could be critical to easing port congestion. And port congestion continues to be a huge issue all across the globe. It's increasing delays and also emissions. And Paschal says that such a standard would help logistics providers and their customers understand past and present performance levels, and would also help them to innovate around solutions. So could have wide-ranging effects. Anyway, so I think maybe we'll move on to the poll now. So remind us, Ilkan, what was the poll question?
Thanks, Sean. Yeah. So to reiterate, the question was, in light of manufacturing problems in China, COVID, power shortages, etc., what should businesses do? And the answers were, the choices were, nearshore manufacturing, e-shore manufacturing, use Vietnam, India, Singapore, etc., or wait it out.
Yeah, that's the nearshore. So let's have a look at the results then, shall we? So nearshore manufacturing as a strategy to mitigate disruption and delays from manufacturing bases in China, that answers 40%. Reshoring manufacturing, that answer, 30% of you felt that was the most valid strategy. Then at 24%, not too far behind, to use alternative manufacturing centers in Asia, particularly Vietnam and India, and then wait it out, hardly anybody at 5%. No big surprise there, because China's zero COVID policy isn't going away anytime soon, and their energy problems probably the same. So nearshoring and reshoring are right about this all the time in supply chain, and companies are looking to shorten their supply chains. And so that does not surprise me at all. And I'm reading more and more about Vietnam and India coming up on the rail as serious global manufacturing centers. So as with a lot of these polls, I imagine that quite a few companies will be doing a mix of all three of those. I can't see many waiting it out, though, to be honest. So I agree with our viewers on that one. Anyway, so moving on. In October, we have a big date in our diary, chatting to David Loosby about that earlier on. Procurement and Supply Chain Live, London. Now, this is a hybrid event, so you'll be able to attend in person, but you'll also be able to watch remotely. And we've got two distinct zones at this event. So we'll have Supply Chain Live and we'll have Procurement Live, and it will be like an expo style event. Now, if you've not experienced a BizClick show before, you really are missing out, because it's a great opportunity to network in person with industry leaders and share insight and get advice. And also, if you're in procurement, logistics, sustainability, any of those areas, then it's well worth you attending. And as I mentioned earlier on, tickets are free. So that's even better. So let's have a little look at what you might expect from the show in a couple of weeks' time.
Welcome to day one of Procurement and Supply Chain Live. I hope you will enjoy the session this morning.
Asking people to do absolutely everything is just not possible.
Harvard picked it up, and it's Harvard's first book ever on procurement.
I don't think there is a provider out there who can provide best of breed in all of these different aspects.
All procuring with government is complex.
Coming here to attend a great conferences, which were very, very interesting. I'm so thrilled to be here in person at Supply Chain and Procurement Live with BizClick Media.
Looking forward to that one, Ilkan?
Sure am, Sean. Actually, just as a reminder to our listeners and our viewers, Procurement and Supply Chain Live London 2022 will be held at London's QE2 Centre from the 12th to the 13th of October. And to book tickets, please take a look in the comments section below, where you will find a link that you can follow. We look forward to seeing you there, and it is not to be missed.
Certainly isn't. Well, that's all we've got time for today, I'm afraid. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you for interacting with us if you're watching live, and for taking part in the poll. And remember that this show is also available to watch on demand. So please do share it with any colleagues or friends you have who may be interested in supply chain or procurement. So a big thank you to you, Ilkan, and to our special guest, David Loosby, and also to Kieran and Drew and the rest of the video production team, Justin and the design team for the fantastic looking magazines, and to Kaylee and the marketing team. This has been a BizClick production, and we will see you next time. Bye.